Welcome to the Mold Matters Podcast. Whether you are looking for help recovering from mold illness or just want to learn more about creating a safe environment for your family, this podcast is the place for you.
Tools in it. One's is kind of a microfiber type sponge along with some handles and some tools that just fit in. That's kind of a hard space to fix or to clean is a windowsill.
It is.
This kit is perfect for windowsills. So
It's
jump
got
on.
everything to fit in those little tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a nightmare
Yeah.
to clean. So
Yeah. Check it out on the mypureproducts.net website, and you can get that for your windows. Hello and welcome to the Mold Matters Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Evans, here with Mike Adams. How are you?
I'm great, Jer. How are you doing?
Excellent. It's good to be back.
We haven't done this for a while, right?
It's been a few weeks. Yeah.
Has it?
Yeah. You've been out of town a lot.
Nez, our producer, how long has it been? Two.
2 weeks, yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant too long. She held up two, so I instantly thought too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's good to be back. We like to talk about another aspect of mold and just the world of mold today. Do you want to introduce our topic at all, Mike? Do you want to do that?
Yeah. It's one that we run into a lot here in Utah. Some areas of the country, not so much. But in Utah, we have this weird thing that well, it's probably not that weird, but we love our storage rooms to store food in.
We really do.
Yeah. And a lot of it is the church here in Utah, the predominant religion, teaches to be prepared for an emergency. So we like to store things.
Yeah.
Some would say hoard. Some would say store.
Store, yeah.
Anyway, when you have a basement, oftentimes right underneath the front porch of the home, they will build what we call a cold storage room. And
because it's for storage and it's
cooler.
cold.
It's cooler.
It's cooler.
Yeah. It's cooler. It's kind
For
of
the most
encased
part.
in cement.
Yeah.
And so it stays nice and cool usually.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know who came up with that idea. I think what happens is you have to pour the foundation around the entire, footprint of the house.
Yeah.
And they want that front patio to be supported by the foundation itself. So they'll run that patio out as part of the foundation and then put wood over the top of that where it goes out, where the porch is going to be, and pour 6 inches of cement on top of the wood.
On top of the wood.
And then you've got yourself a front porch. And then underneath you've got cold storage.
Yeah. And it's a unique little space. And I will add, because we looked up how many homes in the U.S. have basements. So this is probably only going to apply to a third of the homes in the U.S. because that's what this statistic says. About 30% of homes have basements.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them, I thought I guess we probably could have guessed some of this. Like the South doesn't have as many basements, which makes sense. Kind of swampy areas like Florida, and virtually no basements in Texas and Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma. Most of them are in like the Midwest and the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
And I guess Northeast as well has a lot of the basements. And then weird, Washington, Oregon, California, virtually no basements.
Yeah, really weird.
Which is funny. When I lived in Oregon, which I grew up there, we had a basement. So I was one of 4%.
That's right. You did have a basement. I remember that. Yeah.
It's one of the proud few. But we did not have a cold storage that I remember. But needless to say, we're kind of this is very specific to basement settings, and
actually, the problem that we're going to talk about with the cold storage is often associated with basements as well.
Yeah,
basements are kind of problematic.
Oh, the problems that happen in cold storage happen in basements.
Sure.
Is what you're saying. I agree with that. And I'll say another thing about the dynamic of the cold storage space. So, like you described, it's usually they're usually long. They're basically the footprint of the porch.
Right.
But you go if you were to go right under the porch, it's kind of a long, skinny room.
Right, and some
Typically.
people's their front porch kind of wraps around their house a little bit.
Yeah, and their
So you
cold
got a
storage will
big
do the same
L-shape,
thing.
Yeah, L-shaped cold storage.
Yeah,
that-
it's an awkward shaped room, and it's just cement walls, and people put shelving in there, and they store food and other stuff. So
yeah.
it's very common where we live here, and as always, there are some things about cold storage that can make it problematic from a mold perspective. So let's talk about those, Mike. About what about cold storage can make it a candidate for mold growth, and what do you need to look out for?
So just inherently, because it is usually not conditioned at all. And
Air
so
conditioned?
Yeah, or heated,
Yeah.
obviously. You don't have much air movement.
Yeah.
And so that can cause issues. It's usually cooler, so you hit the dew point temperature more readily than you would the rest of the home. So you're probably going to end up with condensation on surfaces more than you would in the rest of the house. And then the other big one, I think, is, we talked about that foundation that goes around the house and it juts out where the porch is, and then they lay down some plywood and pour cement on top of that. Well, very, very seldom does the builder follow up and pull that plywood out from underneath. And we see it all the time where that plywood has become moldy. And what happens is the homeowner will go out and I know my wife loves to do this, squirt off the front porch so
Yeah.
it looks nice and clean.
Yeah.
Well, the water has nowhere to go in those corners, and it's not like you're caulking, or very few people.
Caulking that slab that's on the porch.
Yeah, the slab, between the slab and the foundation, or even if it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a foundation, if it's like rock work or brick,
Yeah.
there's going to be cracks and
yeah.
and voids in there. And the water, when you wash off the front porch with your hose, goes right down, soaks into that plywood, and gets moldy. And I think the area between the top of the plywood and the bottom of the cement is where a huge issue is.
Yeah. We've even, the reason that came to mind is we've had some recent experiences with that where we're trying to figure out the mold. In fact, the one I'm thinking of was a few months ago, and so for whatever reason, they, instead of having, the way you can tell, so if you go into your cold storage and you look up and you see plywood and
Right.
maybe some studs,
Yeah.
or, what look like studs,
Yeah.
that's how you can know if they did or did not remove
Right.
that
And it's
framing.
truly not a structural thing. Your house is not going
Yeah.
to fall apart.
Yeah. I think
Um,
that's why some people are scared. I've been scared to remove stuff too before, because I'm like, is that holding anything? And it turns out it's really just it was to hold the cement for that porch.
Right, because I've tried to pour cement over air
And it
before.
doesn't stay
It doesn't,
very
no,
well.
not at all. It just falls right through. So they had to have something there to hold it while they poured the cement.
Yeah, and the one I'm thinking had foam, like a really thick foam. And I'm not sure what was going on
Wait, the
there.
foam was on the plywood itself?
I think it was. No, it was under the plywood. I can't remember if it was foam and then plywood and then cement, or if it was just foam and then cement.
Yeah, I got
But
you.
either way,
Yeah.
I walk in, there's mold everywhere on the walls,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to troubleshoot. And I eventually I saw that foam up there, and I asked the homeowner, can I kind of pull down some of that foam?
Yeah.
I pulled down the foam, and water just rushed into my face.
Oh,
like
wow.
mold water.
Yeah.
Oh, it was really gross. And as I pulled down that foam, sure enough, just like you're saying, I'm sure they were washing their porch, or a sprinkler,
Yeah.
or even
Yeah.
just watering your plants on the porch.
Right.
Whatever, storms. you
Yeah.
know, that water can easily get that's probably the most vulnerable crack in your foundation.
really is.
right
Yeah,
under
you're right.
that porch.
You're right.
Everything else should be fairly sealed up or covered, but that crack is maybe
Yeah.
one of the more overlooked.
Yeah.
Anytime you're matching up, putting a piece of cement on another piece of cement.
Yeah. And I see it
that
a
crack.
lot when, it's coincidentally, it's usually on really nice homes, but they'll do rock work on the walls, of that patio or front porch area on the outer walls.
Yeah, butting up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looks beautiful, the rocks.
Yeah.
And, they don't it's not like they're putting mortar between the rocks. It's just rock, and they cut them to fit kind of. And
Yeah.
they're full of voids where water can get through there.
Yeah, so it just runs down the foundation and gets into the house.
The other thing is, I had one not too long ago, Jared, that I went to, and the customer said it just smells just funky in that cold storage room.
Yeah.
Well, I went in there thinking I'm going to see all kinds of storage, boxes and whatnot. There was absolutely nothing in there. It was nothing but cement walls, cement flooring, and a piece of wood. And so I'm talking to the customer like, well, this is not rocket science here. There's only one thing that feeds on mold in this entire room, or that mold will feed on, and it's the wood.
It's a piece of wood.
It's a
You
piece
got
of
rid
wood,
that piece of wood?
They're working on it right now. Yeah. And I
It's a big
said,
piece
promise
of
to
wood.
send me pictures when you pull it out. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want to talk about. Let me share about one more house, and then I think it kind of is instructive of some of the other things that need to be considered when looking at cold storage. So this house has this was just last week. Tons and tons of trees, plants, shrubbery right around the house, right up against the house, and we've talked about that before.
Right.
If you're watering really close to the house a lot, I mean, the plants can't soak it up fast enough.
Yeah.
And that was the case here. I mean, it was a beautiful home, landscaped beautifully, and they are just, as I analyze, I mean, actually one of the vents that goes into the so I should say this: a lot of cold storage rooms have little vents,
Right.
maybe one on each side,
Right.
to give, because like you said, the air conditioning and heating is not usually plumbed into that room,
Right.
so they have to figure out a way to get the air to be not stagnant.
Yeah.
as
Some
well.
kind of fresh air in there. Yeah.
So they'll put vents on each end, which I'm surprised how many times I've seen cold storage without vents, though.
Oh, really?
I've seen it multiple times
Yeah.
in Utah here, and I think, well, you remember that one we did last year in Pleasant Grove, that big, nice, beautiful house,
Yeah.
and you were in
Yeah.
the basement? There
Yeah.
was no big, beautiful cold storage, no venting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
So they installed some venting or some dehumidifiers, but anyways, so they had some vents, and I could see where the vents were. They were just full of water, and I realized, oh, okay, so they are just barraging that foundation with their sprinklers right there, because they had
Right.
to keep all those plants alive
Yeah.
and beautiful. And
And the other thing that happens too, I think, is when you set up your sprinkler system when your plants are young, the sprinklers go up and over the plant. But as your plants grow, all of a sudden now you're blocking that sprinkler.
you're just nailing the bottom of it, and it's kind of
Yeah.
falling
So
down.
so the water's falling not out 3 or 4 feet from the house anymore. It's right next to the house now because the plants have
just
grown up.
hitting
So it's just blocking them, and all the water's pouring into the foundation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that might have been happening here. So we go down into the cold storage, and I have my humidity, sensor on me. It's like 75%
Yeah.
relative humidity in there. And I was talking to this is kind of funny. I was talking to the homeowner, and I was like, how long it smelled in there? Really musty.
Yeah.
And I was like, how long has it smelled like that? And she's like, pretty much since we built it 20 years ago. And I realized that this issue has probably been going on for
Yeah.
all those 20 years.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see a ton of signs of water intrusion.
Yeah.
And so it did perplex me for a while, but I really just think it was soaking into that foundation slowly.
And the humidity is just always high.
And
in
then the
there.
humidity
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
so it just was and the thing about cement, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
You can't really see, condensation on cement very well.
No.
I mean, it just absorbs
But
it
you,
so
you
well.
almost have to look at your foundation or the cement as that is just a giant sponge.
Yeah.
And the idea is not, we talked about this before. I hear people say, well, I need to check my foundation. Maybe I have a crack. No, you don't. No, you probably do have a crack. Everybody has a crack
Yeah.
somewhere in their foundation, but that's not the problem. The problem is you're assuming that foundation is like a boat in a
Yeah.
lake, and it's
Yeah.
not. It's not a
Yeah.
boat. It's a house, and you got to get the water away from the foundation of the house.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think now you mentioned, Mike, that cold storage and basements in general have similarities. Tie those two together for us.
Well, a couple of things. One is we talked about the lack of air movement. A lot of times people finish their basements on their own, and that's, they may put a fireplace down there, but they're probably thinking to themselves, this basement always stays cool, so I'm not going to go to the expense or the work of running an HVAC return, vent, and then some heating and cooling registers down here. So they'll forget all of that. Just leave it off. Yeah. Just don't do it. And then you've got stagnant air, and then couple that with, oftentimes you have window wells, and the inherent water problems between where the window well comes out and where the foundation is. That's oftentimes a problem with water. Plus, honestly, on really bad storms, sometimes we see homes where they tell us, look, the window well's filled right up with water.
Yeah.
And the water leaks in and starts to get into that interior wall and start to grow mold. So a lot of it is lack of air movement. A lot of it is colder, so you have more condensation in the basement. And honestly, a lot of it is, I talk to people all the time. In fact, I had a customer years ago that they started realizing they had mushrooms growing in their carpet. And the guy said to me, look, we just don't come down here ever.
Yeah.
And so it just gets away from you.
Yeah. Well, so coincidentally, that same house I was talking about, their back side of their house, I was kind of walking around.
Yeah.
Their back window well, I looked in there, it was like 1.5 feet high with water. And they actually had a sump pump in their window well. And they're like, oh, but it was turned off. And as I analyzed it, I'm like, it hasn't rained in a while. I mean, we're in the summer.
It's
here.
105 degrees here.
Yeah, we're in the hundreds. But it was the sprinklers. The sprinklers fill up their window wells again because there's so much so many plants and shrubbery and things like that.
So let me, not to disparage any customer of ours. We love all our customers.
Absolutely.
But doesn't it seem like it would make more sense to fix the sprinkler than to put a sump pump in the window well?
Yeah.
I mean, call me crazy, but
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So one other thing I want to talk about is, because we were actually reading about cold storage, because a lot of, commercial industrial facilities that need to, temperature regulate their items, like a cooler, a big cooler or something. They also deal with some of these issues. We've had jobs like that where there's a big cooler in the middle of this facility, so you've got really, really cold air, and then the rest of the building's really normal air,
right?
And you have strong potential for mold there.
Yeah.
Anyways, as we were talking about that, a lot of the recommendations there don't even use paper products.
Right. Well, that's one thing I was going to mention about the basements and the cold storage is I mean, all of us have stuff that we don't know what to do with it, but we don't want to throw it away.
Yeah.
So we throw it in a cardboard box and put it in the basement.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst thing, or one of the worst things you can do.
Yeah.
Is put cardboard in a cold storage room.
Yeah.
Just don't give mold food. And you're doing that when you put tons of paper or cardboard or, any type of cellulose.
Yeah. Because I do think that if you have a cold storage, that room is maybe one of the most vulnerable in the house, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no air plumbed into it, like you said, and just, the ability for water to get in there is a little higher.
And you don't go in there very often.
You don't go in there, so it can get away. So my parents had their vents in their cold storage. Water came through there on a big rainy day. It came through and we had tons of cardboard boxes. And this is kind of before I got into the mold industry. And anyways, tons of boxes, just black mold. We had to chuck books that were just rotted to the core.
Yeah.
And some of it was like, sentimental stuff. Had we done plastic bins or something and closed them,
you'd have been fine.
Probably would have been fine. So I think that's a good recommendation.
Years ago, my wife and I had a flood, and we had to throw away my prized high school yearbook.
Oh.
They had a picture of me in my powder blue 3-piece suit, which that hurts.
That does hurt.
That really hurts.
Especially because those are coming back, probably.
Oh, are they really?
I don't know.
Well, on Dumb and Dumber, they were back.
Is that what it looked like, that one?
It looked exactly like that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But that was the style. At least that's what my mom told me. That's the style, Mike. Everybody's wearing these.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one other thing I'll say, Well, let's talk. If you do have a cold storage, I like these tips. So try to avoid cardboard boxes. Put things in plastic. I mean, metal is also not a great food source, but it's not very practical. But plastic bins with lids. What other advice for cold storage?
I would stay. A lot of people build their own wood shelving. I would stay away from that.
Stay away from wood.
Yeah.
Metal shelving.
Metal shelving, or even plastic is better than wood.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned, I think everyone ought to evaluate their airflow in there.
Yeah.
Like I said, some I've seen don't even have vents. I've seen some with no vents, but they do have a permanent dehumidifier just attached to the wall, and it'll keep the humidity at 35 or whatever you decide.
I would check the humidity often, though.
I would too.
In your cold storage to make sure that, everything's okay.
I would too. And this house I was at, they had some just ventilation, just getting the air moving. But again, if you've got water barraging that foundation, there's not enough airflow, I think, that could keep that humidity down. But
that reminds me, that's one of the things that I often talk to people when they're just stumped at their mold problem is I'll ask them, do you have paneling in your basement?
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, guys, especially in the 70s, I think this was big, they would finish their own basement and just glue the paneling right to the
cement foundation.
Which is just
that
creates a horrendous issue.
Between the two is just probably, especially if water comes through it.
It's horrible. It's terrible.
You got to just rip that out.
Yeah.
And then I'll go back to what you said at the beginning. I would go to your cold storage right now if you have one. Yeah. Look up, and if you see wood or foam, I would look at getting that out potentially, because that could be. It's the same concept as the paneling. It's like OSB right against cement.
Yeah, it's going to trap moisture in there.
It's going to trap moisture in there.
Great food. Yeah.
Was that yesterday? You were at that lady's house that had that scenario
2 days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Yeah.
Same that the whole house was great. That room had a little stink to it.
Yeah, and she had multiple people there looking at it, and then I think ultimately she called me back and said, I just don't trust what these guys are saying to me.
Really? What were they saying? It wasn't that? Is what they were saying?
Well, wasn't one of them? I'm trying to remember everything they had told her, but one of them said that wood has got to stay there. I'm like, no, that wood is not holding up the house. And one of them was telling her that I can't remember all the. Anyway, she just had a plethora of excuses of what was going on.
Yeah,
and it was obvious. It was just get that wood out of there.
Yeah, I mean it's a teeny storage room.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
Yeah,
teeny.
I did go around the yard with her though,
uh-huh.
As I was leaving, and I said, look, this downspout, which feeds right into that crawl space area, just east of it, maybe 5 feet, that had come loose and was dumping right into the foundation.
Oh, okay, so that could be part of it.
And then she had another one that is the kind that they go underground, which I hate because you never know if that's plugged or not.
Yeah.
And I said I would just cut that off at the 6-inch mark and put an extension on so you know you're draining properly.
Yeah.
So, I showed her some things to fix it, but it's going to be fine once she gets rid of that wood, and then we'll go back and retreat it.
And actually, I do think, by way of suggestion, I do think you can buy, well, I know you can, at like Home Depot, you can buy some cement caulk. If you wanted to go under and caulk that where your porch cement meets your foundation.
Try to help it a little bit,
It's probably not a bad idea. I know